Hey, gang. Hopefully you guys and gals enjoyed today's show. Captain Ray Rosher, the one and only Captain Ray Rosher, multiple tournament winning angler, the best sail fisherman in the entire world, I
I don't
believe.
know about that. Come on.
This guy catches fish. You guys and gals are going to enjoy the show. A lot of technical stuff that went on in today's show, but if you need to listen to it over again, you can always go back, watch it on the Facebook feed, or listen to it on the YouTube once again. And there's a lot of great stuff that came out of this particular show. So hopefully you guys and gals will enjoy it. Right here on WWBC 1510 AM. We appreciate you guys and gals tuning in every Saturday morning to check out what's going on the radio up and down the Space Coast. We've got a special guest that's going to be here in just a few minutes. I've got the one and only Captain Ray Rosher. And if you guys and gals know anything about the offshore sailfish world, you know that Ray is one of the pioneers of that particular fishery. But you know what? We're going to have a big time this morning. We've got a whole lot going on. I'm Captain Jim Ross. I'm the host of this show. And for those of you guys and gals that are just tuning in, hey, we appreciate you tuning in right here every Saturday morning to see what's going on. You can give us a call on our call-in line at 321-632-1000. That's 321-632-1000 if you want to get involved with the show. And, of course, good morning to those of you out there on Facebook. Good morning to those of you that are out there on the Ustream feed as well. So you can get us at catchamemory.outdoors.com. Ray Rosher, the man, the myth, the legend. Thank you so much for coming in this morning, buddy.
It is my pleasure. I wouldn't miss it. Thank you for having me. We've been talking about this for a long time, and I'm glad we finally did it.
It's and it's a perfect morning for it because nobody's going to be out in the boats today. 20 to 25 knots and 9-foot seas. Nobody's going. Hopefully, nobody's going fishing today. It reminds me of back when we used to fish kingfish tournaments. This is like kingfish tournament weather.
Yeah,
and it was a captain's choice, and boats would go down.
We call that the IQ test.
Yeah.
If you fail, it's really expensive.
That's for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming in. We have I've been working with Ray in conjunction with Ray for a long time. For those of you that are out there listening, Ray also, as you're a successful charter captain, successful tournament angler. What are some pull your mic a little bit closer. What are some of the tournaments that you've won over the years? I mean, you have won, from what I can tell, just about everything that there is to win in the world of sail fishing.
Well, hopefully I haven't won as many as I'm gonna.
Hopefully not. Yeah, hopefully not.
I like to look at it that way. But I've been really blessed to fish with some great teams, great crews, great anglers, and I've won a few world championships and won the Derby 5 times and won just the World Sailfish 3 times down in Key West. And, just a whole bunch of single tournament deals, where you say, man, it took me 19 years to win the Miami Billfish tournament. And when I did, I cried, because I had lost the winning fish 5 times in those 19 years.
Wow.
Those are the things that really stick with you. It's funny. I couldn't tell you how much money I've won in almost all the tournaments, but I can tell you all the fish that we lost that cost us something.
Yeah.
And it's not the money it cost, it's the fact that you came so close. And I hate to admit it, but most of the mistakes were mine. Panicking. That's what happened in the Miami Billfish tournament. I realized after training a mate who had never sailfished, and I got down in the cockpit of my first charter boat, I could run from downstairs. And I'm just kind of this kid was a reef fisherman, handliner, little Cuban kid.
Right.
And he had never sailfished. And so I had to start at A and go to Z. And so I would do it with customers on the boat I'd tell them, listen, if I stand next to you, I'm trying to tell you something quietly. So I'm not advertising to the group what you don't know.
Right.
So just work with me. So listen close, and I'm going to get you in the corner, and I'm just going to go, hey, next time, pull the rigger down before you do this. And clip that ring in the right way, don't twist it, blah, blah, blah. So we go through that. We catch the first 16 sailfish. And he acted like it was no big deal. And I said, Alex, I don't think I've caught more than 8. I think 8's the number in my head in a row, just being on a streak.
Right.
And he goes, really? I go, yeah. So, of course, when I was at home at night thinking about it, I'd be like, what the heck? And then we missed one, and he was like all upset. I'm like, trust me, that happens. And we caught like 18, and then we did like 24 or 26. That's the most. I can't remember the number exactly, but it was at least 24. And then we did some more 12s and whatever. But I really, it tormented me. What is happening? This kid, I'm fishing with a kid who's, these are his first sailfish.
Yeah, yeah.
And I couldn't figure it out. And then it dawned on me. Most of the bites I didn't see because I'm downstairs. I'd see the cork start getting nervous, and then a boom, they got bit. Or I'd see the cork just start marching off to the side. I just read because I'm within arm reach. It was a little boat, 34-footer, and everything was kind of right in the center of the cockpit, rocket launcher, leaning post, controls. Everything was right there. So even if I was running the boat, I could reach over and free spool a reel.
Gotcha.
So what I realized is I was underthinking everything. In other words, before I was overthinking, and I'd see the sailfish coming from the tower.
Yeah, because you're up high and you can see him coming.
There he is, coming in on the right long. And,
yeah.
And of course, everything on a boat's contagious. Happiness, stress, anxiety. And my anxiety made everybody down there just freak out. And I'll never forget one of the 5 years we lost that tournament. Ken Grimes, he's now gone, but he was an amazing angler. I mean, everything, A to Z. He caught the winning fish in the 1988 Bertram Hatter shootout. Like he did, and that fish died and tail wrapped to 653 and planed him up and made the deadline with like 2 minutes to spare. So he was that guy that I could communicate, hold the spool, do this. Like this guy was it. And he backlashed the only sailfish I ever saw him backlash ever in his life, and it was the winning fish because I panicked.
Because
He just got rattled and took the rod out of the holder instead of doing it the normal way. He did it a different way and backlashed. And he was so embarrassed he didn't say anything. And I'm pulling ahead with the boat coming tight, and pow. Just jumped like 10 times just to make it worse.
Yeah.
We had him hooked.
He's out there showing off,
Yeah.
Here I am.
But that would be a good example of what sticks in your head, or all those failures that taught you something. And then, just what changed? Those are the little tidbits that make
Yeah, how do you come back
better
from those sorts of things? It's super interesting that you say that it's contagious, because it is. It truly is. I can tell when my demeanor, and I try to stay positive and upbeat, but there are times where you're just like, why is this not working? I can clearly, in my world, I'm sight casting to redfish. I'm marking fish on my sounder, and we're putting snook as an example. We're putting a croaker or a mullet or a pogie or a shrimp right in the middle of 200 fish, and you're like, why are these? And you sit there for 30 minutes. Why are these stupid things not eating? And it starts to eat at you. Mm-hmm. And you're exactly right. That is contagious. But here's the other thing. So your angler, or not your angler, but your mate, mm-hmm. If he was only a handline guy, with a Cuban, yo-yo style reel, he didn't pick up any bad habits.
Correct.
So there was nothing for you to have to really go and correct or fix.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when I have anglers on my boat, I enjoy people that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to uncoach them to then coach them the proper way. Yeah. And like you say, I have guys that the two worst things in my world are reeling against the drag and dropping the rod tip too fast and getting slack in it and getting a tip wrap, which then as soon as the line comes tight, obviously it becomes a line breakage scenario. And everybody that's on the boat wants to, they have something in their mind as to how fishing should go, how the rod and the reel should operate, and they're trying to do it to what their mind, their perception is telling them, instead of listening to the fish. Mm-hmm. Let the fish tell you how to fight that fish. Mm-hmm. And so you get that fish that's running and going crazy, and you get people that are pulling back on the rod and reel and pull back and reel and pull back and reel, like they're trying to get a grouper out of a hole, mm-hmm. except that you're on 15-pound class spin tackle, and it's a 37-inch snook, and it's still running on its 50-yard run in the opposite direction while you've just, done all this wasted energy, basically.
Yep.
And so you have to go up to those people and literally, adrenaline, as you know, adrenaline makes anglers deaf.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hear anything once the adrenaline's flowing. You can't. Well, I shouldn't say deaf. You can't comprehend. You hear what I'm saying. You just can't do what it is I'm asking you to do. And so you literally have to go up and break the cycle. You have to go up. You have to put your hand on their shoulder. Hey, bud, chill, calm down. You look like you're having a seizure here. Let's slow down. Be smooth. Just lift smooth. Let it down smooth. And it's amazing how many times you have to do that with people that are marginally skilled at fishing because of the perception that they've got in their own mind as to what needs to go on the deck of the boat. Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that he's got no bad habits and you're just training him up from the ground up. That's a good situation to be in.
Yeah, his name's Alex Castellanos, and he became one of the greatest mates and captains around Miami now. That was almost 25 years ago that he and I started, and now he's on the Sandman with John Dudas, and they won a bunch of tournaments last year and have won many over the years.
Good deal.
So he's a fireman and runs the local fireboat. So I'm very proud of him, and he's kind of like a second son to me.
Well, I tell you what, Ray, sail fishing has been a huge part of your life. You've had some huge successes in there, but a lot of us don't sail fish.
Mm-hmm.
So as an example, okay, you have built a sideline company called R&R Tackle. I think out of frustration more than anything else.
Yeah, I needed products that weren't there.
Yeah. So you went out, you knew what you needed, and you went and developed those products.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, you have designed a lot of things that are crossovers. Mm-hmm. You've got trolling baits. I mean, how many different trolling lures you have? You got wahoo baits, dolphin baits. You've got at least 4 or 5 different trolling baits.
Yeah.
You've got jigs, you've got floats, you've got rigging. Well, you developed your own kite fishing clip.
Yeah, and outrigger clip. That came from Australia. I worked with Peter Wright in 2007 and ended up running his boat while he came to get inducted in the Hall of Fame. And, we're fishing big 15, 20-pound baits and having trouble keeping baits in clips. And so, I studied a little architecture in college. I was supposed to be a plumber. I'm the only son of a plumbing contractor. So after 5 years of working on the boats while I went to college, I had to give my dad the bad news that I wasn't coming back. And he gave me his blessing. And
you weren't taking over the family business, huh?
Yeah, that was a rough day, but I am very blessed to say that I got a Lifetime Achievement Award in the IGFA last year, and I was able to hand him the award.
Very cool.
Yeah.
He
let me chase my dream.
That is awesome.
Special.
That is awesome. Well, anyway, I tell you what, let's take a break, and then I'd like to talk about some of the different products that I use to go red fishing. I used some of your products yesterday, catching sheep's head and black drum, and it's amazing that you built it to do one thing, but it does something completely different just as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back, and let's talk a little bit about some maybe some more sail fishing, maybe some wahoo fishing, because you love to wahoo fish too. Sure. So let's talk about that when we come back. Hey gang, we're going to be right back with more Catch Your Memory after these messages, so don't go away. Good morning. Appreciate you guys sticking through that first break of the day, and just wanted to say good morning to those of you that are out there on the Facebook feed. We appreciate y'all tuning in every Saturday right here to see what's going on. We'll get to some of those comments that are already showing up on the Facebook feed right now, but we're going to go to the phone lines because we got Captain Mike Mann on the line waiting for us right here on the call-in line. So good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you today?
Doing good, buddy.
And talk about some bipolar weather.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's probably blowing 25 out of the east right now. We've had low water, up now we got high water because it's east wind pushing a ton of water in through the inlet. It's just, I went out Monday. Matt Lee jumped on the boat with me, and we went out and did a little bottom fishing while we had some decent weather to get offshore.
Right.
Okay, not a lot of the big lanes and stuff I was looking for. We did end up with a few lanes, a few red snapper, and one really nice mangrove snapper and one really nice lane snapper. But the water was really dirty, even 10 miles out.
Yeah, I don't think there's with the swell that we had prior to that blow. I don't think there's any way that we were going to see it clean up within 3 or 4 days. That looked like a 5 or 6 day cleanup to me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that was like the day to get out, and I think it kind of went back to blowing again after Monday, and then we had the big cold front come in, and now it's supposed to be mid 70s and 60s is the low, and then Christmas week it looks like we're getting back into maybe some 30s and 40s at night. So the longer we keep that cold coming in, I don't mind it coming in little waves like this because it allows the fish to kind of adjust. But, man, the water temperature's yo-yoing, and the fish are hungry. Man, there's a lot of fish out there.
Mike, you were mentioning the yo-yoing. So when I was out of Canaveral on Friday of last week, the water temperature was 74 degrees. Tuesday was 67.
Yeah.
The ocean water changed 5 degrees. Basically 5 degrees in 3 or 4 days. I was shocked.
Yeah, I don't mind a little yo-yoing, but man, these are some long draws right here. It's just not, you don't know what to dress for. You wake up, you walk outside and say, okay, I need pants today. Nope, I need shorts today. So it's been interesting. That's typical, for December. It really hasn't made up its mind. I think we're going to get into a really cold January. It's kind of my opinion that January gets here and it's going to be cold. And people in Florida think, okay, it gets cold, the fishing's going to be horrible. No, cold weather turns the fishing on at least a day or two after it hits.
Mm-hmm.
First day that big cold front hits, it may shut it down a little bit. But what it does bring is typically crystal clear blue skies. And when you get those blue skies and that cold water, that late morning bite into early afternoon bite can be just incredible.
Yeah, this is the time of year you can meet your customer at 7 o'clock for breakfast and get to the water at 8:30. And by 10:15, the bite turns on.
Yeah. Yep. And, it's, there's the schools are starting to come together. The problem we're having right now is the water level's coming up, water level's coming down. For those of you guys that don't understand what I'm talking about, Mosquito Lagoon is tidal, but it gets more of a wind-driven tide than an actual lunar tide. You get a big east wind and it pushes a lot of water in. The longer you have that east wind, the further down into the lagoon it pushes it. When you get that west wind, it pushes water out, and it can drop down very low, especially when you get the northwest wind.
Yes. Yeah.
So we kind of had that yo-yo water levels and up and down, and they can drop almost a foot down in the lagoon, which that's a huge drop in an area where the average depth is 3 foot.
Well, the other thing, Mike, is that people don't realize that don't get out there a lot. And this is something that you can use, obviously, to your advantage. If you have water temperatures, if you have water like the Mosquito Lagoon, proper, if you will, from George's Bar south to the south end of Pelican Island and Max Hoke Creek, most of that water is right now a foot deep, a foot and a half deep on the flats. There's very, very few places you're going to find even 24 inches of water because, like you say, the water's dropped out. The thing about that is all of that surface area, that cold air can just suck the heat right out of it. And so the fish, realizing that, drop into the first little hole or depression that's next to that flat. So if you go and look at Google Earth or look at a chart, all you have to do is find the spot that's next to the flat that's deeper. And that's where the fish are. It's a really super simple pattern to figure out, because And then obviously, and when you get days like yesterday where it starts to warm a little bit, and then today it's going to warm even more, the fish slide right out of that. And you don't have to go all the way to the back of the flat. A lot of times they'll just slide out of the hole, and they'll be right there in the shallowest part of the edge because that's starting to warm up. So once again, it's a really simple pattern to figure out if you know the topography of the bottom. The hard part is slowing your presentation down enough to actually get the fish to bite. Because that first day or sometimes even that second day, they don't want to chase. They'll pick up, but they don't want to chase. So you put the shrimp out there, and sometimes like yesterday, I mean, we had double-digit black drum, double-digit sheephead. I had in a place I hadn't fished since last February. I asked, the guys were like, what are we going to catch? And I'm like, I don't know, but the conditions are telling me I need to go try this spot. And we did. You know what we caught most of our fish on yesterday?
What's that?
Shrimp torn in half.
Oh, yeah.
Just tear
that scent out.
You buy these nice, beautiful shrimp, just tear it in half. Just rip the thing right apart and that's what we caught. 90% of our fish on yesterday was a torn in half fresh shrimp.
Yeah, especially when you're on black drum and, the guy casts a whole shrimp out there and he brings it back with half a shrimp. They're like, I need a new shrimp. I'm like, no.
Nope.
That right there is candy. Throw that right back out there.
It's better now. It's better now. Trust me. It doesn't look better, but it's better.
Yeah. The fish are just keying in on that scent when you got it that way, especially the black drum are very scent oriented.
Yeah.
And, they will feed by sight, but black drum don't have great sight. But they got those little barbels, and that'll pick up the scent, and that'll pick up if you've got a live shrimp, they'll pick up that little leg movement. But they pick up that scent, and they key in on that. And, I'm really encouraged with the numbers of fish that I've seen. It's kind of reminding me, I'm not ready to say days of old, but it's getting better. It's definitely gotten a lot more refreshing, a lot more fun to get out there. You were talking, Jimmy, about a place you hadn't been since last February. Isn't that cool this time of year? You're like, I haven't been here because it's been so hot. Let's slide in here and try this. You get in there and it's like, there's fish everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just a really fun time because, prior to this, for a few years, you would go to a place, you'd look around, you wouldn't see much, you might blow one fish out, then you go to another place, you might find a couple of fish, and now you're finding places and there's fish everywhere in it.
Yeah, it's refreshing because, as you know, Mike, we've had 2 years of good seagrass in the lagoons. We've had a little bit of seagrass in parts of the Indian River, and we've had some calorpa come back to some places in the Indian River. And so with that ground cover, it gives the shrimp, the bait fish, the snails, things, the basis of the food chain to places to hide. And then, of course, then you get your silver perch, you get your croakers, you get your mullet, you get your glass minnows, and those things coming back in. And obviously, that's the next part of the food chain. And then the things that eat them are also showing up as well. So I just hope we continue on the same path. It's been a good path so far, and if we can just get a little bit of cooperation out of Titusville, their waterworks department, to not dump more poop in the lagoon system, that part of the river will really come back and rebound as well. I just have a good feeling about it.
Yeah, it makes it gives you a lot of hope, and one of the things I've noticed is that I've really noticed this year is the black drum. Where, say, 3 years ago, I'd get on a school of black drum because the black drum go to specific areas, and every year they'll show up in the same place. And say 2-3 years ago, I was catching 4-pounders. Now there's some 12, 15-pounders where 2 years ago they were 4-pounders.
Yes.
I mean, there's some big black drums showing up big ones in the flats.
Yeah, it's been good. And the size of the trout overall is getting better as well.
Oh, yeah, the size of the trout have been incredible. I mean, I've seen some really, really big ones. This is the time of year where if you want to get a big one, you can do it, but you got to be stealthy. We've talked about it years past. If you're looking for that big trout, remember, you got to release them, but look for them one day, then show up the next day, stay way off of it, make long bomb casts. either using live finger mullet. Chunk bait actually works really good this time of year for the trout as well as shrimp. But, I like to use the artificial, either a small jerk bait or a paddle tail. If you stay way off those areas, because they'll get in those little back coves where there's just enough water and that sun's hitting and it starts warming up. As soon as they hit the right temperature, they'll start to feed.
That's for sure. Well, buddy, we're pushed up against our next break. Have you got any days available coming up that anybody can get on board and go chase some of those big trout and things around?
I've got a few days left between now and the end of the year, and I've definitely got days in January. You can give me a call at area code 386-295-5991. You can go right to my website, fatfishguide.com. You can grab a gift certificate off there if there's somebody you forgot to give that last-minute gift for. You can print it right off in your house. And you can follow me on Instagram, CAPT, Mike Mann with 2 N's, and on Facebook, Fat Fish Guide Service. I'm going to say go Dogs, even though we don't have a game till the 1st.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks a lot, and appreciate that report from Mosquito Lagoon.
Thanks, guys. Get out there and catch a memory.
Take care, buddy. Hey, gang, I want to let you know this segment of the show was brought to you by Lamb Deck in Titusville. So, as you know, they make an incredible EVA non-skid for your boat. And if you guys and gals are looking to stay comfortable, keep those knees and backs in better shape by the end of the day after that long run to the fishing spot, or if you're standing on the poling platform all day, get some of the Lamb Deck EVA non-skid. It's real easy. Go to lambdeck.com, check them out, see all the different patterns and things that they've done on other people's boats. And they can do on yours. You can get ideas for your boat and what you want on it. Or you can just give them a call and say, hey, I've got this idea. Do you think you can do it? And I'm sure they can. 321-505-4888. That's 321-505-4888. When we come back, we're going to go to the Facebook feed because Bo Bergeron has got a question that we want to address here real quick. So don't go away. Captain Ray Rosher and myself, Jim Ross, are going to be right back after these messages. Segment of the show is brought to you by Sun State Pest Management. For those of you guys and gals that might start to see some of those bugs creeping in the house, we've got these colder weather patterns, and bugs don't want to be outside any more than you do when it's cold. So they want to come in and get nice and cozy and hang out with you in your house, but you don't want that. So give Sun State a call, because if you don't, then you're just sitting there with the bugs. And, of course, we don't like that. So give them a call. They've been in business for, 40, 50, 90 years. They've been around for flipping ever. But they will take care of your yard, take care of your house, get rid of all your pests, and it's real easy to give them a call, 800-781-7378. That's 781-7378. Real quick, I wanted to make mention, we had the P&K Altman Foundation Take a Kid Fishing Clinic that went on last week. And, man, we had a big time down there. A lot of kids, hot dogs, hamburgers for everybody, chips, juice boxes, cookies, cakes. Cupcakes, all kinds of stuff for the kids. They had a big time up at Fox Lake Park. I want to appreciate the guys at the Indian River FA&M number 90 in Titusville for helping to sponsor this. They did knots and best fishing practices. They did a little bit of fishing. They did a little bit of luncheon. They ran around, played, just got to be kids. It was really, really a cool time. And we gave away I gave away a bunch of Saltwater Assassin product. Robin shipped me in a box of stuff to give away to the kids. So all the kids went home with a couple of bags of sea shads and dye dappers and different size paddle tails and some worms and things for the kids to mess with. But the main thing that we gave away was a fishing charter with me for one of the kids, and a little boy named Silas won it. And I just wanted to say congratulations to him, and also thank you, because one of my charter customers, Mike Phelps, had me booked for a multiple-day trip, couldn't make it, and he said, look, take the deposits for these trips and go take a kid fishing. And so this was a great thing that we were able to do, and it was all thanks to Mike Phelps with that charter donation. So just wanted to say thanks a lot to both of the organizations, the Freemasons and the Altmans Foundation that put this together, and to Mike Phelps for doing this. So it was a big time. Had a lot of fun had by everyone. So thank you so much. Ray Rosher's in the studio with me this morning. For those of you that are just joining us, we appreciate that. I wanted to go to the Facebook feed because we had let's see here. Where did it go? We had a question. Now I can't find it. Let me go back. We had a question, and the question was... Well, I can't find it now. Okay, so that's fine. We'll go to another question. Dave Boulay said, going to be interesting to see what happens when they are done dropping 650 wave control device / artificial reef looking structures just north of the Max Brewer. The process has begun. So that's kind of interesting. I have not been up there to take a look at it yet. But if they do put those up there, then obviously that's going to eliminate a lot of that wave interaction with the shorelines and help them stabilize their shorelines, keep them from washing away. So that's pretty cool. The other one, why am I not? Here's the problem. I just don't know what I'm doing with a phone. That's
You
the
need
whole,
a teenager.
that's the whole problem is I don't know what I'm doing here. But let me go back to comments. No. Okay, so we'll come back. We'll circle back around because it was a question about wave height, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Anyway, Ray Rosher's in the studio this morning. One of the most accomplished offshore anglers. You're probably the most accomplished offshore angler that I can even think of.
Really?
Of anybody.
You looking for work? I need some marketing help.
Well, I can work with that. Yeah. Did you find it? Oh, thank you. So Paul, our producer, found it for me because I'm incapable.
Yeah.
I don't know how to work these fancy, high-fangled,
Me.
newfangled phone things here. So Bo Bergeron says he had a question. Says, can you explain wave height as it relates to a boat? I've heard conflicting information that wave height is from the center water when flat to the crest of the wave. I've also heard that the wave height is from the crest of the wave to the valley of the wave. So in other words, 4-foot seas, you have an 8-foot drop on the backside, which is correct when you're reading a website like Windy. I'm asking because today's forecast says 11 feet. What does that really mean? What that really means is you're glad you're not out there.
Yeah, I was going to say 11 foot tells me I ain't going. Unless it's a tournament and I have to.
Thank you, Paul. So, as a general rule, Bo and everybody else that's listening, thank you for that question. As a general rule, wave height is a average of a period of the waves that come past a buoy or a monitoring device during a certain period of time. And so every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes or whatever the time period is, you'll have waves that are, let's say that it's saying it's 4 foot at 7 seconds. Okay. That's a good average wave condition for a 15-ish knot day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds right.
So what that means is you'll have a couple of 2 and 3 foot waves. Mm-hmm. You'll have a couple of 6 and 7 foot waves. Mm-hmm. But the average wave height is going to be about 4 foot. And the average wave period, the time from crest to crest or trough to trough, is about 7 seconds in duration. Lately, NOAA has been giving additional information. They'll say the seas are 3 feet at 10 seconds out of the east, and then they'll say, and 1 foot at 3 seconds out of the north. Well, what does that mean? Okay. Well, 3 foot at 10 seconds out of the east, that's a swell. Every 10 seconds, there's a 3 foot rise and drop in the water. Okay. And that's a true 3 foot. Like if you had a measuring device, it's 3 feet from what I consider to be flat water, not from the trough to the top of the crest of the wave. That distance is a little more, but you don't really measure it that way. You measure it from what would be a level like flat water to the top of the wave. And so in the case of 3 foot at 10 seconds, that's a swell coming in from the east, and then it'll say 1 foot at 3 seconds. Well, that's a 10-mile-an-hour wind coming out of the north, creating a wind chop on top of the swell. So you're getting 2 different wind directions, or 2 different wave directions, I should say, in that scenario. As an overall average, any time that you look at the wave height versus the wave period, if it's 4 foot, let's just stay with that 4 foot because it's an average wave height that we have this time of the year. 4 foot at 8 seconds is fishable, very fishable, really. I mean, it's a 4 foot rise and lower, but it's every 8 seconds. And as long as there's not a big, as long as there's not too much chop on top of that, it should be fine. 4 foot at 7 seconds, it starts to get a little bumpier. 4 foot at 6 seconds, that's not comfortable at all. You've decreased your time period by 20%, basically 25%, but you're still going up and down the same height. That's not comfortable. And anytime, obviously, so what we look at as a small boat operator, I'm running a skiff. I'm running a 24-foot, Skeeter skiff. As a small boat operator, I look at the direction first. Okay, what way is the wave coming from? And then secondly, I look at the height and the period. And so if it's blowing out of the northwest or west or southwest, I know that the wave is blowing offshore because the wind is pushing offshore. And so I know along the beach, I can get out and fish on most days. And it may say at the 4 mile buoy, it may say that it's 2 foot at 4 seconds. And at the 8 mile buoy, it may say that it's 5 foot, at 6 seconds. But it doesn't matter that it's 5 foot at 6 seconds, 8 miles offshore if I'm just fishing along the beach. So the wave direction and the wind direction has a lot to do with whether I go out or not. But as a general rule, anything coming out of the east, any kind of an easterly quadrant wave, northeast, east, southeast. If you look at wave height and wave period, you want the wave height to be half what the wave period is for it to be a marginally, easy day on the boat. And that's as long as you don't have wind chop compounding the problem on top of it.
I'll tell you a quick story that really supports
Hopefully that helped.
Supports what you're saying. I fished off walkers back in the 80s, and a big groundswell was there. And I was in the tower of a 38-foot Bertram, and a 54-foot Bertram would disappear behind the next swell.
Yeah, they were big
But
swells.
they were hundreds of yards apart. It came off the North Atlantic. And so the point is, it had to be 30-foot swells, maybe bigger. But you could leave a drink on the console. Not even in a drink holder. You could just set a can there, and your boat would rise like you're going over, slow hills, right?
Like you're driving over the overpass.
Right,
and then
exactly.
coming back down the other side. Yeah.
And then one time I took a boat to Chubb, 23 Seacraft, and it was about 3 foot, but it was probably, 3-second, intervals. And we broke the tower welds and we broke the windshield. So intervals really, to me, have so much more meaning.
Yeah.
Because that frequency, if it's shorter, means the faces are steeper, and steep face and steep back are what really hurt you.
Yeah.
And of course, offshore winds are always great near the beach. I sometimes get charters that call me, it's going to be 20 out of the northwest tomorrow. And I say, well, we're sail fishing so close to the shore. Yes. And the swordfish grounds, it would be horrible. But where we're fishing, I fished in 30 knot northwest winds and had 1 foot seas, just because we're happen to be fishing close
because
to
of
shore.
the proximity of deep water to the Miami area where you charter.
So those are the two things, really, frequency and distance from shore.
But yeah, wave height and wave period. So if your wave height is half of what the wave period is, pretty safe to go.
Yep.
If the period starts shortening up and it's not double what the wave height is, that's when things start to get a little dicey. And you also have to be careful that if you decide to go out, that the wind isn't going to pick up on top of that, because that we'll call it a swell. The swell, you may ride that swell all the way out to the 25 miles offshore here to go dolphin fishing, and then all of a sudden the wind picks up, and now you've got 2 or 3 footers at 4 seconds on top of 4 or 5 footers at 8 seconds or 9 seconds, and that just is not fun. Just not fun. Hopefully that clarifies things a little bit. Guys and gals, we're going to be right back after the next break. Captain Ray Rosher, myself, Jim Ross will be right back. If you want to give us a call, though, 321-632-1000. We'd love to hear from you. We appreciate you tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch Your Memory Outdoors. This segment of the show is brought to you by Engel Coolers, and if you missed the Black Friday sale, keep a lookout because they will have probably one more sale before Christmas time. But one of the things that you can do, I was telling some buddies about this the other day. Engel has blims and seconds and overstocks and things like that. They've got like a clearance section now. You can go get really, really good coolers for just pennies on the dollar. And it may just be a little thing where the color of the lid didn't match the color of the body. Well, I don't really care, you know. I mean, if you want it to perfectly match, pay. But if you want to save $100, what's a shade off? I don't care, you know. Let the cooler lid be a little bit different than the body.
It's your security system. Nobody can steal it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You know, it's yours. Yeah,
that's right. I know that cooler.
So go to engelcoolers.com. Check out all the cool stuff they've got going on there. That new Ultralight 60 is a fantastic brand new offering from them. And, of course, they've also got the soft-sided coolers and the little mini fridge freezers for those of you guys and gals that like to go on road trips or camping, or even, I know charter captains that keep them on their boat to keep their frozen baits in there, and that way they don't have to buy bait every day. They just leave it on the boat in the Engel freezer, and then when they need it, they can pull it out. So pretty cool stuff that Engel puts out there for you guys and gals, and you need to go to engelcoolers.com to check them out. Ray, we were talking about sail fishing, and, guys up in this area, we have so far to run from one spot to the next spot to the next spot. We can't, this isn't Miami or Fort Lauderdale, where we go out, we jig up our pilchards or our greenies or our whatevers, our goggle eyes, and then we basically drive a quarter mile and put them out because we're in 150 feet of water now. And then we bump troll for 5 seconds or 5 minutes, and we're in 300 feet. Then we bump troll back west again, and we're back in 150. Trying to find the zone, if you will. We just, our topography won't allow for that.
Yep.
So if a guy, I tell you, before we go any farther, let's talk about the way that you set up to live bait down in the south part of the state. And then once we get that across, then let's look at ways that we can apply that to areas here in the East Coast, because when you put two and two together, it can get really good, but you got to know what the two and the two are to put together.
Yep.
So let's just talk about what is your boat that you're running now?
Well, we have 3 boats. It's a 34 Express and a 43 walk around, kind of a Torres. It's actually called a Bakel. And I have a 26 Gold Line. Okay. So those 3 kind of, all 3 sizes. So
you've got the average guy around here is running a 25, 26, 27 foot center console. So you've got that offering. You've got that 34 foot ish size boat as well. Outriggers on all of them. I'm assuming.
The 34 and the 43 kind of do the same thing, whether it's sword fishing, sail fishing, bottom fishing. They're all set up.
Typical sport fish, outriggers, downriggers, all of the things that you would need to go out there and make things.
And we
happen.
do that actually on the 20. But the first day I ever chartered the Gold Line, I caught a swordfish. So I mean, you can do the same. The cool thing about Miami is you're so close. You're 20 miles is kind of our furthest run. And believe it or not, an outboard boat is probably a better platform to kite fish from than a big sport fish, mainly because you can fish 360 degrees. So we'll put the boat in the drift. That's one thing I learned from Nick Smith on the old Reliable, is he built that 37 Knowles walk around that I started with fishing with him in the early 2000s. And, you'd have 1 or 2 kites going one way, but on the upwind side of the boat, you had flat lines, mid-depth, deep rods. So you could just fish such a network of baits that you couldn't really duplicate that.
And because you have the ability to fish the cockpit and also to run around the console to get to the bow, you could run, like you say, you could fish almost 360 around the boat.
That's why I built the 43. It took 2.5 years to custom build that. And it was so that I had the best of both worlds. I had the walk around of an outboard, but I had a, 25, 30 foot tower.
So your lines that you have going off the front of the boat, those are related to current. And typically the boat's moving faster or the bait's moving faster.
Well, that's all dictated by your propeller speed, or wind. If you don't have the props of turning, if you're in a drift,
Right.
the velocity of the wind and the windage of the boat is going to cause you to drift away from your bait. So your flat lines and deep lines always go towards the wind. But of course, kite baits go downwind.
Go downwind, yes.
And believe it or not, I've done a fair amount of tarpon fishing with kites, because when you're drifting into a school, if you just have flat lines, the boat gets there first and parts the Red Sea, so to speak.
Yes.
They kind of separate from the boat, and then they come back around and eat your flat lines. But what I found is having a kite downwind presents that bait quietly and before the boat ever spooks it. So there's a lot to be said about how you can integrate live baiting. It's not, and kites, it's not just for sailfish. I mean, we kite fish for tarpon. We've kite fished for swordfish at night. Same deal. You're drifting, all your baits are over here, and I put a kite on the other side. I caught 4 swordfish, all nice size, up to 350 pounds on the kites.
Kite fishing.
But you typically do it on the dark nights, because brighter the night, the deeper the swordfish goes, right? Their eyes are very sensitive to light.
Right.
So we would kite fish primarily when it was a dark moon, or the moon set, or the moon had not yet risen. And the key was, put a Sialume light stick on your kite, and put a Sialume light stick however many feet above your weight. So if you want that bait on a dark night, remember those fish are up near the surface.
Yeah, they're going to be in the top 20,
Right.
30 feet sometimes.
So we might put, if we fish 2 kite baits, we'd put one light maybe 10 feet, 20 feet above the lead, just rubber band it. And then we might put the one closer to the boat, we might go down 75 feet. So now you got 2 kite baits, and you use the light stick as a marker. And what's interesting is it goes underwater, it kind of disappears. So if you don't see your light stick, wind a little, and boom, there's your marker.
Gotcha.
And that dictates, if your marker's right at the surface, then your bait's
Then you know your
approximately
bait's
that depth.
approximately at the depth that you have it preset at.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool when you get a bite, the light starts going sideways, and pandemonium ensues. But the kite, having the light on the kite is really helpful, because otherwise, anytime I lost my light, I'm like, is the kite flying? You'd look at the line coming off the rod tip of the electric kite reel.
And you're hoping
If
it's
it was going up.
Yeah, not down.
down bad, very bad. But
It's interesting. I'm gonna have to take some lessons in kite flying, because
try it. It'll work.
I do a lot of tarpon fishing, and I mean a lot, and that's pretty interesting.
I'm going to take it one step further. Not only do we do it in the daytime, like in the evenings, and having that, and I'm going to tell you, we get 2 to 1 tarpon bites on the kite, 2 to 1.
Really?
After a lot of days of doing it. But believe it or not, I actually do a little better at night by putting the light about 10 feet above the bait and fishing a crab or a shrimp. And I'm going to tell you, I think it's the dock light effect.
Okay. That
They
green
come to
green light effect.
Yeah,
if
they
you
come
will.
to the light, and there's your bait.
Wow.
I'm telling you, the light at night, I think, draws more bites than just having the kite, because you still have the kite presenting the bait to the tarpon before the boat gets there.
Right. Because the kite's always downwind of the boat.
Correct.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm causing you trouble. Now you're gonna have to get all kinds.
Now I'm going to have to get all
rigged
kind
up.
of kites and kite reels and kite rods and good. You just cost me another $1,000.
telling you.
Come on.
Well, the good thing is you know somebody.
I know a guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does work. And what I found is the people who are fishing and watching this are really entertained, because especially in that late afternoon, when they can see the fish targeting, one of the greatest bites is a mullet on the kite.
Oh
in the
yeah,
afternoon,
definitely.
because the tarpon usually doesn't get it on the first bite, and the mullet starts jumping, but he can only go so far in a radius, and the tarpon just goes nuts, and it's just such an entertaining bite. And then when they finally get bit, it's game on.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The one thing I'll tell you that's different about sail fishing and tarpon fishing is you want to fish your clip a little tighter on the tarpon, because you do not want that tarpon to get half hooked, point stuck in his mouth, but not the barb.
But not totally.
And
into
it
him,
pops out and goes slack. And no matter how fast you wind, they're masters at shaking their head, and then you miss them, right? But so just think of how the mechanics work. If you tighten your clip a little bit, you want that clip to hit the water before it either pops on its own, that's ideal, or you wind the kite clip to the boat and manually release it. It doesn't matter. You can fight the fish through the ring,
right?
Through the clip. So just keep that in mind. Tarpon fishing, tighter clip. Sail fishing, we don't mind letting it pop out and fall, because we're,
well, like
you're
you
not
say,
putting as much heat on that point.
With that sailfish, he's going to come up and he's going to kill, stun whatever the bait with his bill. So he's expecting the bait to go slack.
Mm-hmm.
And so that little bit of slack line between the time that he knocks it out of the clip and the time that you actually can come tight on him, that's just a natural thing. And he doesn't suspect anything. Like you say, if the tarpon actually bites it and
Swallows it.
feels any kind of,
If your point goes halfway in, it's bad.
it's bad. Yeah.
Now, if it were to pop super light, you might get away with it. So it just the tarpon eats, and it just almost falls out of the clip like right as soon as you got that extra 1 pound. So I would say with tarpon, it's either literally 1 pound of pressure or like 8 pounds. And you'll have to experiment and find maybe size of the fish, depth of the water, distance from the boat. All those things might dictate what's better for you, a really, really light clip or a tighter one. But I can tell you my experience has been a tighter clip. Like I said, perfectly, where the clip hits the water and releases, you're great. But remember, you kind of need somebody in the boat, whether it might even be another angler or an electric switch on your, electric reel, so that when that bite happens, you see the light stick or the cork going down,
Start to move.
Start to wind the kite reel, so that if nothing else, look at my elbow. So if this is the clip up here and it's hanging straight down, as soon as you wind, look at the angle change.
Okay.
You're flattening it out so you get less slack.
So you're coming off of your line. For those that are on the radio, you're coming off of your rod with your line up to your kite clip, up in the air,
to the bait.
and then it drops straight down to the bait. So that's an acute angle.
Correct.
That's most likely more than 90
That's
degrees.
your big word of the day. You're not allowed two of those.
And then so you want to wind it so that angle isn't.
It opens up.
It opens that angle up. And
So if it does pop prematurely, your odds of staying connected to that fish are better. There you go.
Guys and gals, there you go. Science this morning. We're spitting science out for you guys and gals.
Sounds good. I hope it works.
Ray Rosher and myself are going to be back with a whole nother hour and a whole lot more in-depth talk about fishing right after this. Welcome back. We appreciate you tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch a Memory Outdoors. This is the second hour of the show. If you missed the first hour, we've had some good stuff going on, but we're going to go more in depth. So with Captain Ray Rosher and myself, Jim Ross, grab a cup of coffee, sit back and enjoy it, because we've got a whole lot more coming at you. Ray, we were talking about the effectiveness of kites and how kites get to, because they're downwind of the boat, they get to the fish before the fish know the boat is there. And so now I'm really intrigued about this, especially the tarpon fishing, because I do a lot of tarpon fishing. But I use you make products for sail fishing that are crossovers.
Yeah.
Okay. The floats that you make are the most durable floats of any float that I've ever seen. And I mean, I can use these things 6 months sometimes, before they start really getting torn up and I got to change them out. So I use them for triple tail. I use them for tarpon fishing. I even use them for kingfish out on the reef, or if we go bottom fishing on a wreck, I put a float line out with one of your R&R tackle floats on it, and it keeps that bait up in the water column where a dolphin or a kingfish, or I can't tell you how many red snapper I've caught on a float.
That's great.
Bobber fishing and catching red snapper. It's the unicorns do exist, and they will bite a float. They will bite a bobber bait. So those particular crossover products for me, you designed it to do one thing for sail fishing, but yet there's so many other opportunities to use the R&R tackle products. The other thing that I use a bunch of, and this isn't, it's not a high profit margin by any means. It's not making or breaking your day, okay? But it's the yellowtail jigs. Your yellowtail jigs are fabulous.
Thanks.
The hook is beefy enough that you can actually catch a decent sized fish on, and the color stays on pretty well with the powder coating, that sort of thing. So yesterday, as an example, I have a couple of my fellas pitching your 1/8 ounce yellowtail, quote unquote yellowtail jig with a shrimp on it, and we're catching redfish, and we're catching black drum, and we're catching sheephead. And what's really neat about it, so we're pitching to mangroves. Now, as you know, mangroves, they are a problem in themselves when you're fishing around mangroves, because you always get that one cast that goes up into the branches or goes into the roots. Branches are better. Roots aren't, not so much. Roots, you don't hardly ever get a hook back out of a root. But branches, with the jig head, or with the, I shouldn't say the jig head, with the yellowtail jig, the weight is molded to the shank of the hook.
Mm-hmm.
So your weight and your hook are together, rather than a split shot that's just up from the hook. Mm-hmm. So you cast, you get over the branch. The weight counteracts your ability to be able to shake the hook off of the branch and save the rig. So you break off a lot of rigs based on a split shot and hook rig. And so over the years, I started using some of your yellowtail jigs, and I can get 90% of the jigs that get cast into the branches, I can get that jig back, or that yellowtail jig back. And of course, you make them in various sizes. You make them in quarter ounce too. So guys that are fishing in a little bit heavier current situation, a little bit deeper water, or if I'm fishing around the jetty at Canaveral or down at Sebastian, I can get more weight and I can get down into the part of the strike zone a little bit better. And out sight casting on the flats, I can tail hook a shrimp and I can specifically sight cast it where I want. And for the most part, unless you get in real heavy grass, the yellowtail jig doesn't pick up as much grass as a split shot and hook combo. And so there's a lot of benefits to using it. And so my transition, or my progression in fishing, was standard J hook with a split shot. You hook the weeds, you hook the branches, you break off, you have to retie most of the time. It transitioned into circle hooks because a lot of customers couldn't really detect the bite. They weren't great anglers, if you will. They were average anglers. The circle hook helped them hook and land more fish. If it's a snook, it's a lot harder for him to shake a circle hook when he jumps. Ladyfish the same way. Sea trout, same way. In the case of black drum, sheep's head, things of that nature, the circle hook just kind of, they pick it up, they keep moving, it just kind of slides and locks in. And so you get a very, very positive hookup ratio with a circle hook. But if you cast a circle hook around a mangrove branch and it gets caught, the hook itself gets on the branch, you can't hardly get it off. And especially with the split shot in front of it, because the split shot is constantly acting as this counterweight or counterbalance. Yeah. And so the bow and arrow technique that I like to use to free things up is super, super difficult to get your rig back. And using that little yellowtail jig, literally 90% of what goes in the trees, I can get it back out, and so I don't have to continue to retie and lose gear and that sort of thing. So
we use a 7766 Mustad hook, which is really a tuna bend hook on purpose. When you put pressure on the tip, next time you have one tied to a line, put your finger on the tip of the hook and hold on to the line and watch the direction of the point of the hook. Because the point is bent slightly
inwards towards the shank.
When you put pressure on it, it actually drives straight parallel to the line. So that means the pressure that the line is traveling is exactly the same direction the point is traveling. If you use like a 9174 or any kind of, 180 degree, it's a perfect J.
Yeah.
That point actually kicks outward.
Rolls
if you did the same test, you hold the line, put pressure with the tip of your finger on the point of the hook, and look at the trajectory. That's my big word of the day. Of the barb of the hook, and you'll see that it kicks out. So I learned that commercial fishing for yellowtails and other fish, that all my trolling lures have that 7766 type hook, and you'll see that creates a much better catch ratio, but especially on the lip of a fish. But if it hits a branch, it's spin in slightly, so that's why you're not getting hung as much. You close that gap, which doesn't catch as easily on a big item like a branch, but when it goes around the lip of a hook, it acts like I call it the semicircle. It wraps around the lip of the fish, but not on a hard item.
When you get it, especially in sheephead, you hook a sheephead on that thing, you are not losing that sheephead. He is there. In the last 2.5, 3 years that I've been using that little yellowtail hook, I don't know that we've lost a sheephead
Wow.
in that entire time.
You're going to jinx.
Yesterday, if I do, I do. But yesterday, as an example, we had double-digit sheephead yesterday.
Wow.
Just pitching the mangroves, just looking for reds and trout and snook and that sort of thing. We had double-digit sheephead yesterday. We did not lose a single sheephead.
Wow.
And some of them were only 8 or 9 inches long.
Wow.
And some of them were, 16, 17. We had some nice 16, 17-inch long sheephead yesterday. So it didn't matter the size of the fish.
Yeah.
That hook locks in. Even on the odd shape that a sheephead has, it locks in on it. And then on the beach, I'm using it as a pompano rig. So I sit outside the surf and cast in towards the surf break and stuff. And the pompano, we had pompano on it last week. We caught a permit on it, which is highly unusual for up here and especially this time of the year. But we had a nice 4.5, 5 pound permit that we landed on that rig as well. And I use it on almost all of my triple tail rigs. I use the float with the yellowtail jig under it, and it is, they're dynamite.
It's not a chemically sharpened hook, so you'll look at that hook and go, it looks a little old school.
I touch them up.
Yeah, you can touch them up.
Yeah.
But even if you don't, there's still a fairly sharp hook, and
Yeah.
because of the angle it drives, it wants to drive in
Yeah.
once it wraps around the lip. And most of the fish, you and I haven't talked about this, but I would say, at least in my experience, most of the fish, probably in the 80 or 90% range, are lip hooked.
Yes. Yeah.
Which
very
comes
few.
from that tuna style.
Yeah, very few are hooked down in the gullet.
That's why I call it the
Trout are
semicircle.
about the only ones that are. Redfish, black drum, sheep's head, they're pompano. They're all pretty much all around the lip.
So that's why I chose that hook.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's the only one to use, but I will say that I've had good luck with it over the years. And when you commercial fish, every lost fish is profit, right?
Yeah.
You got to catch X to break even, and everything beyond that is your profit. So when I was younger and I did a lot of commercial fishing, those are really the ideas that drove R&R Tackle where it is. It's all those things that you learn when you're really trying to make a living, creating the best percentages of success, because it's all math.
Yeah. And with a lot of your other products, I would say that you're not just making products to be making products. You're making products to fill a need, and that's that drives that innovation and that desire to have that better hookup ratio, or to not have that fish shake the hook halfway through the fight. That desire is why your products stand out in a field of tackle. I mean, there's every possible manufacturer and then some's making tackle these days, but I consistently there's very few companies that I consistently rely on. Rapala is one of them. Saltwater Assassin is one of them. R&R Tackle is one of them, because I know that those products have been tested over and over and over again, and I can trust them, and my customers can trust them. So that's
the charter boats help with that, and
Yeah.
my big goal is never to copy anybody. So we try to make improvements, or we now just got a CNC machine, computerized die cutter, and we're up to almost 10 3D printers. So now we're really dangerous. Now we're really like hobbyists. We're not making money, but we're having fun.
Well, let's talk a little bit more. So we've talked about some sail fishing. Let's maybe talk about if a guy's going to go sail fishing in this next segment, out of Canaveral, out of Ponce, out of Sebastian. Where, how, and when is he going to set up? And then let's talk about some wahoo fishing as well, because I know you like to catch a couple of those striped tiger fish too. We're going to be right back with a whole lot more Catch a Memory, so don't go away, gang. Appreciate you tuning in every Saturday morning right here to Catch a Memory Outdoors. Want to let you know this segment of the show is brought to you by Starbright Cleaning Solutions. And one of the things that I've really come to love is the Starbright Corrosion Buster Pen. It's a little fiberglass bristled tipped pen that allows you to dig in little crevices and little cracks and around your motor and different things like that. Around your reels. Even your rods, even the guides on your rods, they get a little bit of corrosion in them if you don't get all the salt off of them. And you can get in there with this little corrosion buster pen and just kind of rub it back and forth, and you can kind of erase almost the corrosion that you're seeing pop up without being too harsh. Like a wire bristled brush would be really harsh on a metal surface or a painted metal surface like your outboard motor, or on my my hydraulic steering unit for my outboard, for my Yamaha. So I can get in there and I can just kind of brush around and I can knock that loose scale and stuff off of there, and then I can address the corrosion problem with some kind of a lubricant, or some kind of, if it's steel, I can put some kind of a converter, a corrosion converter on it, like OSFO or something like that. And then I don't have to worry about that just continuing to be a problem. I can get in there with this little pin, but it has hundreds and hundreds of uses. So check out the little corrosion buster pin from Starbright. It's one of the things it's one of those unexpected surprises where you go, oh, wow, look at all the things I can do with this.
Yeah. We use a lot of their stuff. It's awesome. Their
Great.
soft brushes just help us every day.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many deck brushes I wear out in a year, and I know you're the same way.
Yeah,
I will wear a deck brush out, I get a lot of time learning. I don't even learning, just cleaning boats. That's for sure. Hey, let's do the catch conditions real quick, and then let's get back into some specifics here, Ray. So the fishing and boating conditions for this morning, we've obviously got a small craft advisory. It's 20, 25 knots, blowing, maybe gusting to 30. Who knows? We might get a 40 or 50 mile an hour gust. I don't know. It's blowing. Let's just put it that way. It's going to stay that way. So it's, pretty much the weekend's a blowout. But we were talking about wave heights earlier. So seas inside of 20 miles are supposed to be 8 to 10 feet with a dominant period of around 9 seconds. So 8 to 10 seconds, the period's coming through, 8 or 9 feet, 10 feet in elevation, with occasional fish, occasional waves up into the 12 and 13. It's not a fun day to be out there. So it's squared off, is what we say, Ray. 8 feet at 8 seconds, no, that's a no-go. 9 feet at 9 seconds, that's a no-go, 5 feet at 9 seconds, 5 feet at 10 seconds, well, we can probably do that, So if you get that wave height half of what that period is, as long as there's not a whole lot of chop on top of it, it's generally doable.
Yep.
Now, is it going to be fun? Maybe, maybe not. But 3 foot at 6 is a whole lot more fun than 5 foot at 6. So
My mom used to tell me, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough.
Exactly.
I filled that shoe.
Well, Ponce Buoy this morning was 9 foot at 9 seconds with a 68-degree water temperature. So we're right there at Cobia, temp, guys. When the wind does lay down, you guys can get out there. 4 Mile Buoy out of Canaveral is 67 this morning, 5 feet at 8 seconds. 20 Mile Buoy was 75 degrees, and it was also right around 9 at 9. And the 6 Mile Buoy out of Fort Pierce, water temperature down there was a little bit lower than the 20 Mile Buoy. It was 74 degrees, and it was 7 feet at 9 seconds. So down, if you're getting out of Fort Pierce or if you're getting out of Sebastian in the next couple of days, I would look for an edge, because your inshore water is relatively cool, and yet where that stream edge is going to be, you're going to see probably a 1, maybe a 2 degree temperature break, and that's going to be a good place for you to go looking for dolphin and sailfish and things of that nature. Gulf Stream right now, 40 nautical miles out of Ponce, 28 nautical miles out of Canaveral, and 26 out of Sebastian. The current surf temp at Ponce is 67, Cocoa Beach is 66, and Sebastian is 69. And the tides look like this. We got a low tide at 12:57 p.m. and a high tide at 6:43 p.m. at Canaveral. And down at Sebastian, we've got a low tide at 12:47 p.m. and a high tide at 6:47 p.m. And the best times to hunt and fish, according to the Soul Lunar Tables, presented by All About Archery, or hunting if you're going hunting. This morning, there's actually a major from 10:34 until 12:34. So that's a really, really, yesterday that bite from about 10 o'clock until about 12 o'clock was really good. So slide it back about a half an hour, maybe 35 minutes today, and you should see an increase in the activity in the fish, or the ducks, or the deer if you're out in the woods. And then the minor this evening is right there at dark. So you've got a minor coming in at 4:12 to about 5:12 p.m., and that should extend right on into the twilight hours and after sunset. So good time to be on the water, whether it's mid-morning or later this afternoon, or especially the woods, because you don't have to deal with the wave height out in the woods. Ray, are you going to get out in the woods today? I know you're up here because you've got a lease out here that you like to hunt on, and that's a whole nother subject. Let's talk a little bit about. So a guy wants to go sail fishing or fishing with kites around this area, around the Sebastian, the Canaveral area. We don't have 150 feet that's a 5-minute idle from 300 feet. We don't have or 3-minute idle from
big flat bottom.
yeah. We have a lot of flat. So if you're telling a guy to go out here, and he wants to fly kites and he wants to try the live baiting technique. I mean, what if you were coming out of here knowing that we've got a reef system that's in the 70 to 90 foot, and then you got to go all the way to basically the 21 fathom to the next reef, and then all the way to the 27 fathom to the next reef, and then the Okalina Bank at the cones at the 30-mile mark. How does a guy come out here and decide where to set up?
So the times that I fished out of Palm Beach and we ended up north, Stewart or Fort Pierce, the best that we did was when there was a color change or there was a wreck or a ledge or something that caused a concentration of fish. That flat bottom is why dead baiting is so dominant from Stewart north, because it allows you to cover ground, mark fish, mark bait, kind of hone in as the day goes on, and this guy sees some, the picture starts to emerge of whether those fish are if there's a temperature break or some reason why they're a certain distance offshore, parallel to the shore on that edge, or if they're on a wreck or, any kind of a
piece
structure.
Of bottom structure.
Right.
Yeah.
The best I ever did was when we found those fish on a wreck, a piece of structure, or a color change. And when we didn't, we fell flat on our face almost every day, because you can't compete sitting in one spot with 6 baits out on the kites, on 2 kites, and compete with somebody that's moving around with such a beautiful spread of, dead baits,
rigged
and
ballyhoo
dredges,
and
strips, whatever they have. And so that would be my advice. First of all, kind of don't break out the kites unless you have a reason to, like you have some concentration. The other thing, of course, I was always very respectful of the boats that are local and trolling. If I, was to find fish and and it just happened that boats moved in or there were boats over there and I went and checked it out and they're fighting fish, I just never interfered with dead baiters with my kites. In other words, it's just kind of a courtesy thing, the old golden rule. So the best I ever did was finding a color change or something like that. Color changes were the best because they went for miles and miles.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to be on top of somebody. It's really kind of tough. I would not kite fish on top of a wreck or a little piece of structure if there's a local boat there. I just don't do it. It's not the right way.
Etiquette dictates it's not the way to do it.
Listen, it's a small world and everybody knows somebody.
Yeah.
So, that's just something to think about here. You're kind of limited, in my opinion, because of that, to find a color change if you're going to kite fish. And one little tip I left out when we were talking about tarpon fishing with a kite. Take a party balloon about the size of your fist. Take about 6 inches of copper wire with plastic coating on it. We call it phone wire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Make a little loop.
Wire.
Yeah, make a little loop on one end. Blow up that balloon about the size of your fist. Tie it to that loop, and then take the tail of that wire, that straight piece of wire, and wrap it around the center piece of your kite. An SFE kite has a little hole built into the centerpiece. Plastic centerpiece has a hole. You tie it there. Or a Lewis kite has a kind of a cotter pin. We tie it on that so that it doesn't slide off. And the reason for that is if a kite hits the water, think about what happens if that kite sinks. If it sinks, it becomes a sea anchor.
Yeah.
And so, believe it or not, that little balloon helps eliminate panic. And also, where is it in relation to the boat if it hits the water? Downwind. If you took the engine out of gear, which way are you going?
You're going right at it, yeah.
Right. So it kind of solves its own problem. The only other tip I'll give you is if a kite hits the water, immediately pop all your baits out of the clips, because you don't need a tangle because a bait swim around a kite line or all kinds of bad
mess.
Yeah, it's a mess.
You'd have a mess.
So kite hits the water, balloon on it, no rush. Number one, pop all your clips out, 1, 2, or 3 clips, whatever you're fishing. Back the drag off on your reel, whether it's a hand crank or an electric, because if you wind too hard, you can break the sticks. And it's not just
the sticks that hold the kite,
because it's a sea anchor now,
yeah.
Right? And it's not the cost of the sticks. It's you now have to, like on an SFE, they're actually specific sticks. They rate them based on their bend. That's how they get really stable kite flying. And so if you have a J2 stick and you break one of the 4, now you got to get a J2 stick to replace it, or an H11 or whatever they're rating. They got almost 100 ratings.
Wow.
So the point is, back the drag off, get the baits out of the way. And now you just manage letting the boat drift, or you drive to the kite, pick it up. One more tip. Fishing slow, you hook a tarpon on the kite or sail, and the kite hits the water. And you're now torn. Do I chase the fish or do I go get my kite first? Well, remember that kite's probably 200 to 300 feet away. So odds are you're probably better off chasing your fish, especially if it's first fish of the day, slow day of fishing. So there's a little tip. Our kite lines are made with a dental floss mark of graduated sizes. Small one on the end for the long clip. Middle clip is a little bit bigger floss mark, more layers. The third one's a swivel. Dump your kite line to that swivel. Cut it about 2 feet beyond the swivel, meaning closer to the kite rod. Mm-hmm. Maybe tie one of your little sailfish floats or another balloon to that, throw it in the water, and go catch your fish.
And then come back. And it's almost the same concept as you're sitting at the bridge in the Keys.
Yep.
And you're on anchor.
Correct.
You hook the tarpon.
Same
the tarpon goes screaming. You have to come off anchor quickly, and you've got a little buoy on your anchor line. So you just unwrap, throw it over. The buoy is a placeholder and a marker for the anchor, and you don't lose it.
But now you see those couple little tips will really help reduce the stress. And that's probably the biggest thing that makes people not want to try a kite is what happens if the kite hits the water? What happens if the clip, if the clip doesn't release, blah, blah, blah. We make clips that are kind of designed for consistent release. They're long and skinny, and we have a proprietary ring that goes in them. And all of that helps it release every time or close to it.
Gotcha.
More so than some of the others.
Well, we're going to be right back after this next break with more from Ray Rosher and myself, Jim Ross. So don't go away. Catch Your Memories coming right back at you. Hey, guys and gals, welcome back. We appreciate you tuning in. We've got about a half hour left of the show. Want to let you know that this segment of the show is brought to you by Petrucci Insurance. And as you know, nobody likes to pay for insurance. I hate it. You hate it. We don't want to give that money up, because we know the insurance company doesn't want to give it back when we need it. So you hate paying for insurance, and you don't want to be paying too much for insurance. There's a real easy way to figure out how to get the type of insurance, the proper coverage for your boat, your home, or your car. Call Petrucci Insurance. They farm it out. They see who's got the best rate, who's got the best rating as far as the company goes, at the best possible coverage that you can get for that particular item. And they put all that together for you so that you know you're not overpaying for your insurance. Because Lord knows I don't like paying for it, and you don't like paying for it. But it's real easy to get involved. You can give them a call every Saturday. They are off, but every Monday they are back in the office. 321-632-1200. That's 632-1200. Give Petrucci Insurance a call and let them do a rate quote for you today. Ray, we had talking about these kites and tarpon fishing and sail fishing and stuff. You were mentioning one last thing about the wind itself. Obviously is going to dictate the size and the type of kite that you're going to be trying to fly, but there's a couple of other factors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when wind is blowing from land to the sea, so you're talking about that west wind,
that offshore breeze,
especially if there's buildings, if you're fishing adjacent to buildings, you'll see the kite kind of wobble around, get very unstable. Expect that. The only way to mitigate that is to put a helium balloon on, and then you have no worries. Of course, helium's expensive, and you got to blow a balloon up, and it's a little bit of a pain in the neck to hold on to that balloon if you're running to a new spot. I recommend a small, 4-foot cast net.
And put lay it
over it, yeah. Or take a 2-pound bank sinker or a 1.5-pound bank sinker with a long line clip, 6 inches line, clip it to your kite line, the bridle.
Yes.
Right? Because it can't go anywhere. And bottom line, anytime you add, and again, in the summertime, a lot of times you don't have enough wind, but that's where a helium balloon would really help you. But if the wind's anywhere coming onshore, east wind, north wind, south wind, you'll probably have a very stable flying kite. One last tip, you get a brand new kite. I don't care if it's a Lewis, SFE, Tigris, whatever it is. You put that kite together, put it on the deck, take your scrub brush, soap it, both sides, rinse it, and when it's a brand new kite, many times you'll see some color come out of it. And that's the ink that you just took off the fabric. And that increases the porosity, meaning the wind can go through it evenly. Sometimes when they silk screen, there'll be a little more ink to the left or to the right. And if you didn't break that off and clean it, a lot of times that's where you get a kite that flies hard left or hard right, or, wobbles or spins. Clean the kite. And by the way, maybe somebody got that kite salty on the last trip and you didn't see it. Someone was holding the kite and they took a wave, and at the end of the day they handed you the kite and you put it back in the tube and you put it out the next day and it flies horribly. Well, that's because it has salt maybe on one quadrant of it. So it's all the reason these kites don't have tails is they get their stability through the wind passing through at an even rate. So anything that breaks that even pass through of wind is what causes instability. There's one last little thing to know about a kite, and that is that centerpiece that moves, that adjustment.
Yeah.
So the longer it is, the higher your kite flies. The shorter that piece is from the swivel to the center of the kite, the more horizontal, the lower that kite flies. I always move that. This is a good thing to do with a new kite, to take a different colored magic marker, red, let's say. The marks on the kite line are black. Get a day where you have nice onshore wind, no turbulence. You've scrubbed the kite, it's dry, you go put it out. And I would go to the shortest mark and make sure it flies. If it flies unstable, move it out at half an inch or an inch until you get it to fly on a short mark. That's your new short mark.
So you're tuning it and setting the parameters.
Then you're going to go half-inch increments and it's stable, and it's every time you move it out longer another half inch, it flies higher, higher, higher. And all of a sudden you go to fly it and it just doesn't want to stay straight. Move it in a half inch, double check it, it's stable, it's your new long mark. So now your red marks become your true tuned marks.
Oh, that's
and
very
sometimes
nice.
they're on the same marks that the company puts there, but knowing what
always.
that tuning does really helps you solve problems and reduce headaches.
That's a great tip from a guy who's been flying kites for a long time.
From a guy who's sunk a lot of kites.
Let's talk a little bit about wahoo fishing, because you love to catch wahoo too, and guys around here. So the whole kite thing may be a little, challenging.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
Maybe everybody's thinking, well, I don't really, that's not really my thing.
Yep.
But I like to go catch wahoo.
Yep.
Okay. So
And
let's
big
talk
teams,
about doing
yeah.
some wahoo fishing.
Yep. So I'd say the biggest, I guess, new product or change for us lately has been the buckets in triple bait tubes. We make a Yeti bucket that'll hold 6 tubes, or that would be like for herring, greenie size, goggle eyes, and then we make one that's 4 holes. And Frank Vining got one of the early buckets, and he came up here and won that tournament last year with, I think, a little over 300 pounds, 311 pounds or something.
Wow, 300 pounds of wahoo
fish.
and 3 fish.
So that kind of opened everybody's eyes to the power of a bonita, a bullet bonita.
Yeah.
And that 4-hole tube is the size that he uses. And I just replaced his bucket. And he's really pioneered it, and it's opened the eyes to a lot of guys that are now using them. So the live bait fishing, flatlining, has really helped people realize some of those bigger fish are biting the live bait more so than the lures. Now, they still have lure. What's happened now because of this kind of breakthrough or change, some tournaments are now going dead bait category, lure category, lure category and live bait category, because it is apples and oranges on the production, on the size. So
it's the same way as when the guys started running the big yellow fins, big contenders, big offshore center consoles, and they were able to outrun the sport fishing boats in those wahoo tournaments in the Bahamas. And so the sport fishing guys got ticked off about it and eliminated. They said, you can't run outboards in these tournaments. You have to run an inboard sport fisherman. So they kicked them out because they were getting their tail kicked by the outboard boats. So
seen stuff like
rather
that
than
a few
just
times.
create a whole different category, they just like, no, you can't fish. I'm taking my ball and I'm leaving and I'm going home, kind of thing. Is that whole 6-year-old in the sandbox scenario is what it turned into. But dead baiting is still highly effective, and that's
lure
why
fishing.
I would say
Dead bait.
most of I would say most of the people fishing out of Ponce, fishing out of Canaveral, are fishing lure fishing with bent butts and kind of high speed scenario. And you make lures that
Make
do
wahoo lures.
that do that particular thing. But this new live baiting scenario with these tubes, they're like tuna tubes, but it's in a bucket, so
Yeah.
it's portable.
We 3D print them and mold the tubes. So we use a combination, kind of a hybrid, a molded tube, and then 3D print the framework that it goes into, epoxy it, prime it, paint it. A lot of labor goes into it, but the net result is something that you would use a washdown hose, or you can tee off of a transom live well line. I always like to tee off my transom live well because most of the time you have a clear window on top or the front. And if you tee off, most live well pumps produce a lot of water.
Yeah.
And if you put a T in that line somewhere and create, some kind of a bulkhead fitting or a deck fitting that you can take that water to the bucket or the triple tube, what you're really doing is taking some head pressure off that pump. And the big advantage that I have taking it from my transom live well is I know if I look down from the bridge or the tower and I see my transom live well running, my tubes are running. Yeah. And that matters, especially in some of these faster boats where you might get airlock. So if I can look at my transom, it's just a split second confirmation that my tubes are working, because I might have my key baits in there that I need, bonitas or whatever, goggle eyes, whatever it is that I'm fishing, my next spot, I need to know they're alive.
Let's talk about a guy who's not tournament fishing. He's going to go out next Saturday. The seas are going to be 2 to 3 foot at 7 or 8 seconds. It's going to be a beautiful day on the water, maybe a 5 to 8 mile an hour or knot breeze. And he wants to go out there. First of all, he's got to catch the bait.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys provide the ability for guys to catch the bait on your sabiki rigs
Sure.
and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So, and how many different products do you have for catching those bigger type baits like that?
We probably have about 20 sabikis that are capable of catching those bigger baits, whether it's goggle eyes, blue runners, bonitas. We have a lot of sabikis for smaller herring, greenies, pilchards.
That's the ones I use the most.
Yeah.
Those fluorocarbon rigs that you have they outcatch everything. I mean, I've fished every single company that I can find, and you stack them up against yours outfish them every time.
Thanks. You got to catch us on a good day. Anyways, those bonitas are, best caught on like a little white feather. We make a BR2, BR3, 60-pound main, 40-pound branch. So it's, kind of a scaled up rig to handle that extra pressure of a bigger bait. And basically get them in the boat, get them nose down in the tube, and these tubes can stay in the boat and put your drain hose in the corner scupper, or a lot of guys put them on their platform on the back. Tie them off to a cleat or sea sucker. We do make, on our triple tubes, we make slide brackets that have 4 suction cups. All that basically is how we operate. Just have those tubes where everything's pre-rigged.
It's just a great bait management system, and it keeps them super lively.
I've had a bait live overnight 16 hours. I've had some guys keep them longer than that. So they do hold long periods of time. I've ridden the sand in the Keys with ballyhoo in the tube. So you wouldn't think of ballyhoo as a tubable bait. Meaning it's, just maybe wouldn't really put its nose in the current and live okay, pointing straight down. And 4 hours later, we pick them out of the tube, and they're very lively.
Still ready to go.
Yeah, and the biggest advantage of all the tubes is that, especially if you're shorthanded or you're with friends or family, your wife, girlfriend, and you don't want to bicker and, hey, do this quick, throw the bait, cook. You're pushing somebody to bridle a bait. You pre-bridle everything. It's ready to go. You see that dolphin or you see a sailfish or something, you need a bait quickly. It's ready to go. And
pick it up out of the tube.
And it's not spun up in the transom live well
doing donuts.
circles.
Yeah.
That's the
truth. Well, guys and gals, we're going to take our last break of the day. When we come back, we'll have the wrap-up with Captain Ray Rosher and myself, so don't go away. Hey, guys and gals, welcome back. We appreciate you tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch Memory. We've got the last segment of the show with myself, Jim Ross, and Captain Ray Rosher, Miss Britt Charters out of Miami, Florida, and, of course, World Hall of Fame, I think. If you're not there already, you're going to be there for the Sail Fishing World Hall of Fame. So it's cool that the IGFA has recognized you. But, man, you have won a lot of tournaments, and that just comes from persistence. Perseverance.
You just got to be old. That's all.
and old. The more gray hair you have, the more
you
opportunity
don't hit a home
you've
run
had.
every day. You just got to be able to swing the bat a lot of times.
That's the truth. Well, guys and gals, this segment of the show is brought to you by Strike Zone down in Melbourne. If you're looking for some of the great products we talk about on today's show, Strike Zone's got quite a few of them. So stop in, check out what Sean and the gang have going on down there. And of course, Christmas is coming. If you don't know what to get that person, if you're trying to buy me a Christmas present, don't. Just buy me a gift certificate to Strike Zone. I'll appreciate it, because that way I can get the things that I know that I need, and you don't even have to. It just takes all the guesswork out of it. So, and I appreciate that.
That's a great store, well stocked.
It is. It's a very well stocked store. Ray, sabikis, all of these different things that anglers need. You've done the testing. You've basically created categories that didn't exist in the tackle industry to meet some of the needs of your fishing endeavors. But what's, for the average guy who's just going out and just wants to catch a couple of fish on the weekends, it's hard to beat an R&R tackle sabiki rig. Now, here's the thing, though. Like everything else, there's little subtle things that have gone on behind the scenes that the average guy doesn't see when he goes and he picks up the sabiki out of the store. So why do some of your heads have red thread? Why do some of your heads have green thread? Mm-hmm. Why do some of them have little shrimpies and things? I mean, if you go look at the selection of sabikis, just sabikis, you're like, wow, I don't even know where to start sometimes. So for the guy who's just getting here, he's just moved down from Illinois, he's just moved down from upstate New York, and he was a salmon fisherman, and he knows how to pull, a downrigger, and he knows how to pull planers. Yeah. This is all stuff that is things that he can complement those techniques that he had, that he's brought with him to come down here and do some sail fishing or dolphin fishing or wahoo fishing.
So it's kind of interesting. I started my bait fishing career when I was a little kid, probably a little younger than 10, on the Juneau Pier with Pete Schultz, who now is fishing headquarters. And he was kind of my babysitter, because I wanted to fish longer than my dad wanted to hang out on the pier. Right. So he'd put me to work catching bait. $1 a dozen for Manhattan and 25 cents a croaker. This was a long time ago. And what you quickly learned, if you're going to do the $1 a dozen for Manhattan, because you wheel the garbage can up there and he'd put them in the tank, and guys would come in with their boats, buy the bait live, and put an aerator in their bucket, whatever. But what you had to have was a red ribbon rig, and the Manhattan attacked red, and that stuck with me. You never saw a green ribbon rig or a white ribbon rig or a black ribbon. It was red, and so it started that, I guess, journey of trying to figure out what bait likes what color. A greenie typically likes a green head. So my favorite number one rig is an RGF5. That means it's a red head half. We do 8 hooks instead of 6.
Right. Yes. So 8 hooks, 8 droppers on the main line.
One little tip there: always fish a little more lead than you think. If you think you need an ounce, put an ounce and a half. The reason is, with 8 hooks, you might hook more baits than you think, which is a plus if you're prepared. That weight's what keeps your rig from getting tangled. And also, never throw a rig out and just go slack for 10 seconds, because on the way down it may get bit by multiple fish, and that's how you get the big tangle. Yeah. You stop it every 2 seconds and just see if it's light. If it's light, that means they're swimming it up to the surface. Wind, but a 2 second interval to stop it just for a split second, and make sure you feel the weight. If you don't feel the weight, wind. But back to the favorite color, RGF5 is half red, 4 red heads, 4 green heads, and fluorocarbon, and a size 5 hook. A size 5 hook will catch anything from a 3-inch cigar minnow or 3-inch pilchard all the way up to about a 1-pound blue runner. And the half red, half green ensures that when you mark that school of fish, you don't necessarily know if they're sardines, Manhattan, cigar minnows, whatever. And when you put that RGF5 down there, you're ready for any of the species. And if all of a sudden they're all greenies and they're eating mostly the green heads, now you might take another rod that's got all green, or just switch rigs out, or give that rig to the person you like least in the boat, and then you go put the green one on and show them up. But anyway, you get the idea. It's a tester rig.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And if they're reds, if it's Manhattan and they're eating mostly the redheads, go to an all red. And we have those, right? We have an RF5. We have a PG5. So that's the all red. or the all green. We even have an RRF, which is red head, red hook. So like the Tsunami has a red hook, and the guys sardine fishing. Sardines really like red. So the red hook and the red head, like if you're fishing the rock piles at Jupiter and there's sardines there, or the bull shark wreck off Stewart and there's sardines there, go to that red head, red hook. I always start with the RGF5 because it allows me to test the school and see what they're fighting. And so that's kind of how the evolution of R&R carried different ideas to make all these different SKUs, because you start with an idea that color matters.
Yeah.
And then you just branch into, okay, this is the tester, and then we go left or right from there.
And it's interesting to me. So on our buoys out of Canaveral, because I fish outside of Canaveral the most, our buoys, we will have different types of bait staged at different levels in the water column. Right. So the big pilchards, the big horse pilchards, may be circling the rig, but the greenies are sitting all on one side of the rig. Yeah. Or if there's sardines, sardines just kind of scatter around sometimes. They don't really do either of those two things. They're just kind of in a blob and just kind of holding in the current, not necessarily actively
Well, they're getting pursued by a lot of predators. Yeah. Sardine is just the M&M of the ocean. Everything wants to eat it. Yeah. So, that's where the red-green comes in. It'll help you. And then you can, of course, have the other ones to focus on when you figure out a color.
Got to figure out the color that the hornbellies don't want to eat.
I have not figured out.
They don't seem preferential in anything. If it's moving, they want to get on it.
That's it.
However, in saying that, hornbellies, like everybody's like, oh, good grief, I got hornbellies. I got bumper is the proper name for that bait fish, but we all call them hornbellies because they're such a fun fish to unhook. Which brings me to the fact that you make a de-hooker that's one of the best in the industry. But the hornbellies, that's the only thing I've been able to catch some days. And I have caught snook on them.
Oh, yeah.
I have caught cobia on them. And I have caught tarpon on hornbellies.
I know a guy that made a teaser for sailfish out of all live hornbellies, and their sails come up on him, and then he'd throw the greenie. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So he didn't burn up all his greenies on a teaser.
Didn't burn his greenies up on a teaser, yeah.
So, little thought.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it's there's so much to fishing if you really want to delve into it.
Oh, yeah.
And you have exposed this audience to an entirely new world of fishing, because this isn't the type of fishing that we typically do up here. But like you say, in specific scenarios, these techniques can be a game changer for you. It's just a matter of finding and identifying those scenarios. But something as simple as the sabiki rig, everybody needs those.
Yeah.
So, Ray, it's been an absolute pleasure. And of course, you run charters. If somebody wants to go see this firsthand, they want to get on your boat and see how to do this firsthand. Right now is the time. I mean, this is sailfish season. Yep. How does somebody come down to Miami and get a hold of you?
MissBrit.com. My number's 305-788-3474. 788-FISH.
Yeah. And you've got your boat and then two other boats that
three boats.
You got three boats running right now.
Yep.
Man, there's nothing better than getting on a boat with a guy who is as good at their craft as what you are when it comes to chasing those and catching the sailfish. So I would highly recommend anybody looking for a sailfish charter, take the 3-hour drive and go.
I'm just looking for a good excuse to go fishing. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Jim.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I appreciate it, Ray. And I thank you for driving up. That was really nice of you to come up.
Yeah.
Guys and gals, till next week, we're going to do this all over again. We got a whole nother crew coming in next week to give you some more insight. But want to thank you very much, Ray. One of the world's best captains, bar none. Thank you for being here.
You're officially in charge of marketing.
I will take care of that. Till next week, guys and gals, do exactly what we're going to do. Get out there and catch yourselves a memory.